What is up, guys? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, we're gonna be making our very own Stanley Cup playoff bracket. The way this video is gonna play out is we're gonna be going matchup by matchup, round by round, and I'm gonna be telling you which team I think has the edge, which teams I think will move on in how many games, and finally, which team I think will ultimately win the Stanley Cup. This is honestly one of my favorite things to do every single year. And yeah, let's just get straight into round one. The first matchup we're going to be taking a look at is the matchup of the Colorado Avalanche versus the Seattle Kraken. Now, this one's going to be a very interesting matchup in my opinion, because you have the reigning champions, the Colorado Avalanche, who absolutely demolished the playoffs last year. 2 out of their 4 rounds were won in sweeps, and the other 2 went to 6 games. They just smoked the competition. And they're playing against the Seattle Kraken, who are in their second year as a new franchise, and clinched the playoffs for the first time in franchise history. When we compare these teams, they're very opposite teams, I'm not going to lie. You have the high-power, high-octane Colorado Avalanche with insane offensive defensemen. And then you take a look at the other side with the Seattle Kraken, who's pretty much the most all-around team in the league, at least what I think. They have very good depth. They don't have anyone that's too high in scoring. Like, no one has 100 points on the team. They're not even close. But they have many players, even fourth-line players, who are scoring up to 20 goals in the season. And it's just very good production from all 4 lines. You also have players like Matty Beniers, who's having a breakout season. But again, they are versus the Colorado Avalanche, who have some injuries. They have a lot of injuries, I cannot lie. Gabriel Landeskog, really tough news there. He's not going to be playing in the Stanley Cup playoffs this year. He's still dealing with injuries from last year's Cup run, so that's a big loss for the Avalanche. Currently, they have Cale Makar, their all-star defense. He's day-to-day, but I think he'll come back in time, or at least come back when they need him the most. And they lost some players like Kadri in the offseason. The list goes on. But they're still a powerhouse team. They finished first in their division. Nathan MacKinnon and Mikko Rantanen are coming off of career years, and I just don't see them losing this round. So for round one, Colorado versus Seattle, I have Colorado taking them in 4 games. A clean sweep. Now, I know it looks like I'm not giving any credit to the Seattle Kraken, but it's just a new team. They're playing very well, but it's the Colorado Avalanche, and even with the injuries they have, their star players are just too good. I see them going 4-0, and they're going to continue rolling from last year. They got a taste of victory last year, and Nate MacKinnon and Mikko Rantanen had career years following it. They're not stopping anytime soon. Now, that's it for the first matchup. The second matchup is fairly interesting as well. We have the Dallas Stars versus the Minnesota Wild, and I'm pretty excited for this one. Honestly, I think it's a pretty underrated matchup. You have some very young, talented teams here. Like the Minnesota Wild, you had Matt Boldy, Kirill Kaprizov, and then you take a look at the other side with the Dallas Stars, who have arguably the best young forward, the best young defenseman, and the best young goalie with Jake Ottinger, Miro Heiskanen, and Jason Robertson. They're a very stacked team. They made some decent additions at the trade deadline. It's going to be an interesting matchup, like I said. I think this one's going to be a little tighter than the previous. I do not see a sweep going on here. But it's tough. I'm a real big fan of Kirill Kaprizov, but I just don't know. I think the Stars, they're going to want revenge. They went out in 7 last year. Jake Ottinger carried them as much as they could, and they lost to the Flames in overtime. He had like 60 saves or something. And he's grown into an even better player now. I mean, last year they were a wild card team, and this year they almost won their division. For Minnesota, it could go both ways. You have Fleury and Gustafsson. It's a pretty solid tandem, but as we know, Fleury, he either is rock solid or he coughs up a little too many soft ones. So it's a real hit or miss here, and I'm going to have to lean with the Dallas Stars in 6 games. Big fan of Minnesota, just don't think this matchup's for them. I think it's an early exit. Now moving on to our third matchup in the West, we have the Vegas Golden Knights, who won the Pacific, versus the Winnipeg Jets. And I don't know, This one could really go either way in my opinion. You have the Winnipeg Jets, who spent a decent part of the season at the top of the division or even at the top of the West. And then they really fell off. Their scoring was off. Hellebuck started going from a Vezina candidate to just like your average goalie. And it just wasn't looking good. They almost lost that last wild card spot. But you know what? They're in the playoffs now. And they could make a big run here. And then you look at the other side with the Vegas Golden Knights, who looked like they were on the decline last year. But then a healthy Jack Eichel. Petrangelo's still great. They brought in Jonathan Quick. Him and Hill or Thompson, whoever the goalies are, it's a pretty solid tandem. Just their defensive lineup's just great with Martinez and Theodore. Their forwards are pretty stacked too with Marchessault, Stevenson. The list goes on and on. And Winnipeg has some stacked players too. But I think the all-around gameplay is just a little more favorable on the Vegas Golden Knights side. Now, this could be really wrong for me, but I'm going to say Vegas in 6. And if I'm wrong, I'm going to guess that Winnipeg wins in Game 7 because of Connor Hellebuck. I think the only reason they make it past the first round is if Connor Hellebuck pulls a Carey Price and just carries the team. Then again, I've never seen Jack Eichel in the playoffs. He could turn into an absolute monster. So for that reason, I'm going to take a guess, and I'm going with the Vegas Golden Knights in 6. Now, finally, we have one last matchup on the west side for round 1, which is the Edmonton Oilers versus the Los Angeles Kings. This is a repeat matchup from last year, and you know what? I think the Kings are looking for some revenge. They've been one of the top teams since coming back from the Christmas break. But guess what? The Edmonton Oilers have been, I think, even better since the trade deadline. They've been one of the top teams in the league. And this is going to be a real cool matchup. I think it's going to have a lot of bad blood from last year. You have the high-octane, high-offensive Edmonton Oilers. And then you have a pretty still offensively gifted team in the LA Kings, but a very, very defensively solid team. So it's a real cool matchup. They're going to go head-to-head. The defense is going to try and shut down McDavid this year and Draisaitl. They did not do it last year very well. So who knows? But this one, I'm going to keep it nice and simple. And I'm going with my Edmonton Oiler babies. I think McDavid has another gear in him. It looks like he kind of slowed it down for the remainder of the 5 games in the season. It looks like he wasn't really trying. And I think that's because he's just keeping his energy for the playoffs. And they're going to go on a run. So yeah, like I said, Edmonton Oilers in 5. LA might pull an absolute blinder here. But I'm giving it to the Edmonton Oilers. So that is the end of round 1 for the west side. We're going to switch over all the way to the east side and do round 1 there. So the first matchup is the Boston Bruins versus the Florida Panthers. And Habs fans, we wish the Panthers weren't in it. But luckily for us, they are playing the Bruins. And this could go 2 ways. 1, the Boston Bruins sweep the Panthers like they should do it. Or 2, they get swept just like Tampa did against Columbus a couple years ago. This team has been one of the most insane teams we've seen in ever. This Boston Bruins lineup has broken NHL records this season with career high wins, career high points, fastest to reach a certain amount of points, fastest to clinch. The list goes on and on. You have David Pastrnak with 60 goals. I don't know, man. It's just going to be a hard team to beat. And then you have the Florida Panthers, who should not be in the playoffs, but they got carried by their goaltender Lyon, Matthew Tkachuk, and Montour. Those 3 carried them to the playoffs. It's going to be an interesting matchup, but I'm taking the Bruins in 4. Don't think it needs any more explanation. Panthers might steal a game or 2, but if everything goes to plan, and I know it's the playoffs, which they don't always go to plan, that's the beauty of it, I got the Bruins in 4. And now, one of the most exciting matchups of the year. We have the Tampa Bay Lightning versus the Toronto Maple Leafs. A round 1 repeat from last year. And the Leafs, I strongly believe this is the last chance. This is do or die. If they don't make it through the first round, people are getting fired. People are getting traded. Kyle Dubas brought in a whole new line of defense with Gustafsson, McCabe, Shen. He brought in a whole new line of forwards with Lafferty, O'Reilly, and Achari. And then they have their newest prospect coming up, Nyes, who looks very solid, I can't lie. Looks like a very solid player. They've added some great additions. Their goaltending, despite all the controversy at the beginning of the year, Samsonov looks excellent. This might be the year. And then you have the Tampa Bay Lightning, who looks like they took it easy this year. They struggled at times, I think a few times. Seemed like they were in losing streaks. Vasi did not look solid in multiple games this year. But you know what? Despite them losing players, despite them coming off of a cup loss, I think they've got it in them to beat Toronto Maple Leafs one more time. I think they kind of just cruise to the playoffs. I know I just said they struggled a lot during the season, but I don't think that affects them. They have so much experience in the playoffs. Braden Point just hit a career high in goals. He's having a career season. Kucherov, just the usual. He's doing his insane amount of stuff. Stamkos, you know what? He hit some really insane numbers this year. Hedman's just going to be fine. You know, they have a stacked roster. And if Vasi jumps on the coke this year, I think it's over for the Leafs. Now, last year, I had Tampa in 7, but you were able to change your bracket after Game 1. Once Game 2 happened, there was no more bracket changing, and Toronto looked real solid in Game 1, so I switched it to Toronto to win in 7. And that was the biggest mistake ever, because I had Tampa in the finals, and it blew up my whole bracket, because guess what? Toronto still lost in the first round. And now my bracket was screwed. So this year, I'm not doing it again. And for that reason, I am taking the Tampa Bay Lightning again. And you already know what games. Game number 7, Tampa is going to take the cake once again. It's just a curse. I don't think they're going to break it. It's just history repeats itself. Despite how stacked they are, I think Tampa's got it. Anyways, that's all for that matchup. Let's move on to probably the most boring matchup on the East side. That is the Carolina Hurricanes versus the New York Islanders, who just scraped by because we lost to them. So that's going to be, like I said, a pretty boring matchup. You have the Carolina Hurricanes, who won their division, top of the league all year round. But I'm not sold on them. I'm really not. They lost Svechnikov. I think he had an ACL tear or something. They're a very, very depth team. You know, they have 4 lines that are very good. You know, their 4th line's probably better than our 2nd line in Montreal. Their defensive lineup is pretty solid. Their goaltending, I would not say it's through the roof. I think it's just they play very well because they have a great team in front of them. And then you have the New York Islanders, who were my pick to beat the Boston Bruins if they were to play in round 1. And for that reason, I'm still going to stick with the New York Islanders, I think. You know, they're a very defensive team. They added Bo Horvat. You know, it's a great acquisition. He didn't do much lately. Matt Barzal's coming back off of injury. Should be good for Game 1. It could go either way. Sorokin could play his best hockey in his life, and they could still lose because the Carolina Hurricanes are just better. But the kind of hockey that the New York Islanders play, it's just really annoying to watch. And for that reason, I'm going to vote for the Islanders here. It's going to be a long and hard series, but I have the Islanders winning against the Carolina Hurricanes in 7 games. This is probably my most controversial pick, but hey, it's the playoffs. If the top team won every single time, then it wouldn't really be fun, right? There's going to be upsets, and I think this is one of them. Now, finally, the last matchup for round 1 on the East side is my favorite one on the East, which is the New Jersey Devils versus the New York Rangers. This is going to be a crazy one. You have the Devils, who have an extremely young and talented team who does not have much playoff experience. And then you have the New York Rangers, who have a pretty solid amount of playoff experience, made it to the semis last year. And I think they're going for blood this year. But the Rangers, I don't know. I think they did too much. They added Tarasenko. They added Kane. Those are some big-time players. I just don't see it working out. I don't know. I'm not going to lie. This is complete biasness for me. Because the Devils, they're just the team I'm rocking with. I'm not even going to lie to you guys. I want to see Jack Hughes. I want to see Luke Hughes. I want to see Bratt. I want to see these guys tear it up. They've been so exciting to watch all year round. It's just nice to see them play and finally break out of their shell. So, for that reason, I'm not going to give any more explanation. I just have the New Jersey Devils winning it in 6 games. I think a lot of people might disagree with me here. It's an unfortunate case that one of these teams are going to be eliminated because I see both these teams going far in the playoffs. But I'm going to go by favorites here, which is probably not a good idea. But by favorites, we're going, and that means the Devils are winning round 1 in 6 games versus the Rangers. I know. Oh well. Anyways, that's it for round 1. Let's move on to round number 2. We're going to stick in the East right now just to keep it nice and simple. Matchup number 1 we have is the Boston Bruins versus the Tampa Bay Lightning. A pretty interesting one. But to keep it real simple here, I still think the Boston Bruins are just way too strong. I think the Tampa Bay Lightning and Toronto Maple Leafs series, it's going to be a very physical one. You saw in their last game in the regular season, very chippy, right? So it's going to be a pretty physical game, a series, and I think they're going to get worn out. I think Boston is not going to be worn out because, like I predicted, they're going to win in 4 against the Panthers. So I just simply think the Boston Bruins are going to take the cake here against Tampa Bay Lightning, and I'm giving it in like 5 games. I think they're just going to roll through them. Now, if we take a look a little lower, we have the New York Islanders versus the New Jersey Devils. And here I'm going for my favorite again. I'm going for the New Jersey Devils. I think they're going to have a crazy run this year. I could be completely wrong, and they're out in 4 games in round 1. But I'm just going to take the risk here. I'm a big fan of their players. I'm really liking how they're having a breakout season. And I think they're going to roll with their momentum like they have been all year long. You know, their production has not slowed down. They have a pretty solid defensive lineup. Their goalies are playing decent. And you know what? It's a solid team. I think the Islanders are going to get beat up from their games against Carolina. We're going for the New Jersey Devils here. Might be a wrong take, but hey, we're doing it. And I'm going to say in 5 games. Surprising, but 5 games for the Devils. Now we're going to flip the page and go right back to the west side. We're going to start with the Colorado Avalanche versus the Dallas Stars in round 2. Here you have the Dallas Stars with a super young core, and then you have the Colorado Avalanche with a little older of a core, but way better players. And for that reason, I know these are getting shorter, these explanations. I just think that Nate McKinnon and Mikko Rantanen, Arturi Lehkonen, and if Makar's back, it's just an unstoppable team. And then you have Bowen Byram, who's breaking out of his shell. Extremely good young defenseman. It's going to be hard to beat. The Dallas Stars, they're out for blood this year. I really believe they can make it far, but I think the way the matchups are, it's real tough for them to be meeting up with Colorado in round 2. So, really unfortunate for them, but I'm going for Colorado in 6 games here. Now, the last second-round matchup is the Vegas Golden Knights versus the Edmonton Oilers. I don't know. I think a lot of people here might take the Vegas Golden Knights because they might be a more all-around team. You know, their goaltending is probably a little better than the Edmonton Oilers goaltending. It could be a little questionable at times. You have the defensemen who are probably way better on the Vegas Golden Knights. Better defensively, better offensively. The offense is clearly better on the Edmonton side. But I'm going to have to go with Edmonton here. They're just my bandwagon team this year. I don't know. I'm a fanboy for McDavid. I want to see this guy go and win a cup. I really think he could do it. I think last year they made it pretty close. They got swept in the semis, and I think that just flipped a switch. 153 points from this year. He's not going to stop here. Vegas is just another stone that he's just going to kick around the street. I don't know if that made any sense. Vegas is losing this round. I have Edmonton winning it in 7 games. Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Matthias Ekholm. This team is going far. So for the semifinals on the West, we have the Edmonton Oilers versus the Colorado Avalanche. Just what I pictured. Because guess what? Last year, that was the semifinals. Now we're out for blood. The same matchup. I think this is going to go way different than last year's. It's not going to be a sweep. Although the Colorado Avalanche are strong, I think by now they might get a little tired. And on the contrary, for the Edmonton Oilers, I think McDavid has another gear in him. He's just going to keep switching gears. He's the best player to ever lace him up, in my opinion. The Edmonton Oilers are making it to the finals this year. They're not losing twice in the semis to the Colorado Avalanche. You heard it here first. As for the East side, we have the Boston Bruins versus the New Jersey Devils. And I unfortunately think for the Devils, this is where they cut their ropes and they say goodbye, because the Boston Bruins are going to roll right over them. I think the Devils are going to make it pretty far, like I said. But when it comes to veterans, when it comes to experience, comes to just everything, I think the Bruins are going to take the cake at the end of the day. They're just too strong. You know, like I said, I think they either get swept in the first round, like the Tampa Bay Lightning did a couple years ago, or they make it all the way. And for that reason, like I said, Boston Bruins, they're winning it in 5 in the semifinals, and they will join the Edmonton Oilers in the finals. Now, if you're still here, this is a very long video, easily my longest video, and cheers, I appreciate it. Or maybe you skipped just to see who I would have in the finals. Either is perfect. So we have the Edmonton Oilers versus the Boston Bruins, and I kind of been hinting at it all video long of who I've been on the bandwagon for, and it might be the Edmonton Oilers. Like I said, I'm just repeating myself at this point. The Boston Bruins are amazing, but I can't get out of my head how good, I was going to say Wayne Gretzky. It's not Wayne Gretzky, it's McDavid. How good he has been, how great Leon Draisaitl has been. And you know what? I think they could just easily take control of this finals. I think the Boston Bruins will probably start feeling a little more tired then. I think it's just almost impossible for them to keep up the amount of winning they've done all year long for another 16 games in the playoffs. Call me crazy. I know they've done it all year long. I just think it's going to stop. And for that reason, I have the Edmonton Oilers winning the finals in 6 games. So yeah, this is a long video, I'm not going to lie. But if you managed to stay all the way to the end, just want to say thank you. Appreciate you for watching all the videos. And yeah, that's going to be it for today's long video. Let me know down in the comments who you think is going to win the playoffs this year. Let me know if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. I'd love to have conversations with you guys and just talk about the playoffs, one of my favorite things of hockey. So yeah, if you did enjoy today's video, don't be afraid to hit that like button and maybe even consider subscribing. Now with that being said, I'll see you all tomorrow. Take care.